Welcome to Inside Image, presented by Seismic Sound Off. I'm your host, Andrew Gary. Companies are good at saving the final interpretation. What often disappears is the reasoning behind it. Amii, Rozell, and Hana Kabazi explain why that matters, especially now that AI can search across years of company information and produce answers that sound complete even when the record is not. We also get into the practical side of using AI well. Training employees, understanding enterprise systems, checking the source, and doing your own research before acting on an answer. AI can help recover institutional memory, but only if the memory is actually there. The conversation moves from that gap into what companies and geoscientists can actually do about it. From better AI training in enterprise systems to questioning outputs, checking sources, and making sure the final decision still belongs to a person. Let's join the discussion. Well, I'm excited to talk to you about this. I've been here all week and over at the Digital Pavilion, which is pretty close to where we're at. It's been, I feel like, a packed house all day, and they're talking about AI primarily there, and we're going to look into that a little bit here. But I did want to start, we have had ways to save documents, discussions, project history for decades. I use a project tool called Basecamp for a lot of my client work. Why is institutional memory still such a persistent problem?
Yeah, so I think one of the big things between, that we've done a really good job of so far, right? Like in the industry, we have done a really good job of storing data, right? So we've pushed, in the massive interpretation tools, for example, everyone's centralized now. You have everyone's formation tops, everyone's horizon interpretation. You have all of these different things that are just the end result of people's decisions, right? And so I think the institutional memory kind of comes in as why were those decisions made, right? And so how do we capture those things, I think, is really the problem we're trying to tackle now, right? Because the distance between where and wells get selected for drilling versus when they actually do get drilled, there's a lot of time, there's a lot of people that potentially leave, they switch to different teams, they're completely gone from the company, whatever it may be, right? Or just, honestly, you can forget, right? Like, you're like, why did I make that decision 3 years ago, right?
Yeah, I think it's a lot of is storing information the same as preserving why something mattered, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Essentially, I mean, it's a document management versus decision management issue.
Yes.
I think.
Yeah.
But speaking of that decision management, it does make me think that it's skipping ahead a little later, but since we're talking about it, adding data into some repository, pretty straightforward, but actually explaining why you came to that decision or why a committee came to that decision, very difficult. How do you actually get to the most important part of that aspect of storing the information, which is the reasons?
So I guess I think what I'm understanding, right, is that you spend a lot of time, all of your why is in PowerPoint presentations, for example, and meeting invites, not meeting invites, and meeting notes, right, for example, where it's, I thought about doing this, I thought about maybe proposing this first, but because there's lease restrictions or there are issues with mineral owners, or it turns out that the rock quality isn't quite as good as we were anticipating. You have all of these little nuances that really aren't captured in the end results. And being able to tap into those things, because now, meetings are getting recorded, right? Everyone's using Google Meet, there's Gemini, we spend a lot of time throwing our Google meeting notes into AI to be able to understand, where our action items are, how can we help people? And so I think those are the things that we can definitely tap into.
And kind of segueing into that, utilizing AI for those insights and for those understandings that you had on the why you made that decision 3 years ago or 5 years ago or whatever the case is. Like, you can maintain that provenance, that understanding, that historical data, historical knowledge base, years later, and pull that out into a current decision that you're trying to make, or just general insights on a well or an area, right?
With your expertise in this, we've mentioned several times these decisions could become years later after it is. What have you found is important from what a team may not think? They're working on this, and then 3 years down the line, they wish they had X, or something that they did was like, oh, this was actually very helpful. I'm so glad this got stored, or this was shared or put here.
Yeah. I think in my case, I think it's more on the drilling side, right? Like just those little nuances, like she said, like being able to understand what happened years later, I would say, on where you want to drill. Like if they want to change pads, like, oh, okay, well, we didn't realize that this area may have had an environmental issue, and we wanted to put a pad location here, and maybe there's not necessarily like physical environmental, but maybe there's like an endangered species or something, and you have to like change on the fly and go somewhere else. And having those other insights available to you is kind of where AI has been helpful lately, and being able to recognize those environmental risks without interrupting permitting status, right? So sometimes if you permit and you have like an environmental risk that pops up, then you have to switch gears. And so that costs dollars, right? Which is what we don't want to do.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think for me too, it's almost more like what I wish people had of what I've produced, if that makes sense. Like geos, like a lot of times I've always been kind of on the extreme upstream, if that makes sense, like exploration. You propose locations and then you find out later, that people are going back and looking at areas that you already looked at because they didn't know that you already looked at them, for example. So you end up saving a lot of time if you have that save that say, hey, I already looked in this area. It's really not as good as we thought that it may be. This is more economical. These are why I made these decisions. So having that thought process brought forward for people like Amii, who are then making the drilling decisions, to be able to have that information, I think is really critical too, right? So that you're not backtracking, you're not, redoing work that people did multiple years ago.
How do you, I'm standing, there's two women here, you're experts in your field, your area, your subject. So when someone is looking at your work maybe 3 years down the line and are trying to understand, anyone that's worked with AI for any length of time can get a sense sometimes it's overconfident. It may make it seem like it may make it seem, Hana, that a decision you made, you were 95% or maybe 100% confident on AI, and really you were not. How do you preserve those more nuanced decision makings that people like yourself with the experience and understanding of these areas you're working on, to where you can use the value of AI for what it can do, but not
I was going to say, like, we can come about this in very different ways. Yeah. Like for me, I'll come about it in a data quality perspective, because data management is my biggest background. And for me, AI is only as good as the data that you give it, right? And so from an interpretation and maybe an opinion standpoint, but it's, like from that standpoint, the answers are only as good as the data that you get, right? So the more data that you have, or that AI has, maybe the better insights it can give. But you should still make that decision on the back end, right? But from the other side of it, from the geological side of it,
I mean, I think in the conversations that I've had with it, I will say what AI is good at is once you call it out, it goes, oh, yeah, you're right.
You got me.
You got
Puts
me.
his arms up. You got me.
So, I mean, I think it's also just having a conscious effort to make sure that you're still questioning AI. And I think that there are a lot of situations where people just take it for fact, right? So I think it's understanding, like back to what Amy's saying, if you understand the data that you're giving it, you understand where there may be potential holes, and being able to know the difference between it making inferences based off of data that it has versus, actually having the data and it is fact, right? So I think it also just comes down to like how you communicate with your agent, right? Like, are you saying, hey, please be specific, or let me know
some more research.
Yeah, or let me know when you don't have the right information for these questions. That
if
I think
you need more information,
really
tell me, right? 'Cause, I mean, that's what we've gotten really good at, is being able to talk to it not like a human, but giving it human intelligence in a sense when you're asking those questions, when you're trying to gain the right insights. Is, okay, tell me what you don't know, or tell me where you've looked, or why did you come up with this answer, and talk, have a conversation so that you can pull more information for yourself and the answers that it's giving you to make that more intelligent or more complete operational decision.
It's like when teachers asked you for bibliographies when you were writing papers when you were little, right? It's like, prove it, right?
Yeah.
So
Is at a company level, or I was just thinking, there is a way to communicate to these AIs that is very important, and it's important to understand what it can do and what it cannot do. Are you seeing like companies training their employees for that? Is this a lot of self-learning right now? Like, how essential is having the workforce understanding what they're about to use? And
it is critical, and I'm not seeing a lot of training. I'm seeing a lot of, this is what AI is. I'm not seeing a lot of, this is how you need to use AI, or how you should learn to use AI, or how you should talk to your agents. I think we're finding that we are having to do a lot of the training with our clients, and which is great. I'm all for giving the knowledge that I've learned, right? Like, I absolutely. But I think, yeah, like Hana said, it's extremely critical, because operators are beginning to make operational decisions based on inferences, and insights they're getting from the AI that's being forced a little bit. I mean, it's available to them, and I think that it's really important for people to truly understand how to utilize the systems that they're given, or the technology that they're given to them today.
yeah.
Yeah.
are you finding, so in working with your clients and talking about AI, are you finding like common misconceptions, just common questions where you're having to go back and share this at this point in the AI revolution?
I mean, I think also it's just, in the industry, the thing that is gold for us is our data, right? So what we've found consistently is people, have this thought that, the data is going to go in, it's going to train, everyone's going to be able to see my data, all of those things. We're having to have a lot of those conversations about, the difference between the open source type, where you're just using ChatGPT for free, versus having these enterprise scaled solutions, right? Where
You have that data security.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. And I think there's a big hesitation there, right? Is in, something like a seismic volume is so valuable to a company, right? And so to risk having that out there scares them, right? So, and that's why, understanding how AI works, how your particular version that you're using works, right? And having those policies and those understandings becomes, I think, really important for the companies to define.
The interpreter, the data team, and the person approving the investment, they may each kind of need something different from the same prospect. What do they need to understand about each other that often gets lost between these groups?
I think they're looking at the data in different ways, right? And so they need to understand that they're looking for different answers. And so they may ask different questions and gain different insights based on the same data. And so for me, I think they need to be cognizant of that respect, because they each have their own tactical way of pulling something out. And I think that once they recognize that, they can probably get a more complete answer and a complete picture based on that same data. I think it's still a part of our historical way of working. It's just we have the data more accessible to us at our fingertips now, especially with AI, and being able to connect to all the systems at a more convenient mechanism. And so we need to understand how each other works to be able to gain that bigger picture.
I think that's critical. Like, it kind of brings us back like full circle, right? Because, when you have, say, people at a higher level who are maybe a little more removed from the day-to-day, who are trying to get a bigger picture of what their strategy is over 3 to 5 years, now they maybe don't even have to go talk to the people who are doing the work every day, right? And so that's where that context then comes back in, where it's really important that if you have that captured for people who are maybe more removed from the day-to-day, they can make even better operational decisions based off of that context that they have, right? Because now they just see the data, they can make their own inferences based off of, what they're getting back from the technology. And having that context, I think, is going to be really critical for making sure that they know where the holes are, for example.
And you're talking energy context more than anything. Yeah. Not just industry context, understanding.
All of it.
Operational context.
Yeah.
Because we don't, for goodness, the energy industry doesn't need more data. We have plenty of data. We just need to understand where it sits and how to access it and the right questions to answer to get the good insights to make the better decisions.
I think that's key.
And more complete decisions, I would say.
It's knowing what questions to ask. I think that can be really critical. Yeah.
Yeah, it just makes me think of another thing you're going to really want to be saving moving forward is the actual prompts you're putting into because a small change or what was the question you asked could really differ.
And I think it's just like, let's just say when we were talking with a production engineer the other day, and one of the problems that she has is being able to access a wellbore drawing that was from years ago and having to recreate a diagram for planning a new well or planning a recomplete or something like that, but not having a diagram to understand what it looks like downhole, so they have to recreate it. Being able to have that, if you have that data accessible, you can recreate it pretty instantly within a particular intelligence layer, like an AI program or platform, and with energy context, right? So being able to access that and be able to manage those workflows a little easier, or a lot easier these days and having those manual processes, I think makes a big difference.
There's always a lot of change in this industry and in this space. How do you incentivize, encourage employees to put the details down in these documentations that would be helpful down the line?
I think it's less forcing them to put the details down and creating essentially a way of working of where it almost automatically gets recorded, if that makes sense. So I think it's the good habits of starting to record critical meetings, right? Like where you're meeting to discuss your drilling plan for the next 3 or 5 years. Like make sure those things are recorded, right? It's an easy button click. People aren't having to utilize technology in that way, is to capture as much of that thought process as possible, as opposed to forcing them to having to write more details, because I think then you are going to meet resistance, right? Because people already feel like they don't have a lot of time, and now they're not going to want to write down even more things to help someone 3 years from now, for example.
And I think another thing too is that a lot, if not most, already are capturing details.
Sure.
Like you were saying the other day that you used to do these presentations and capture all of your interpretations and your whys into presentations that would get buried in files and never get seen again.
Yeah.
And so those details are captured. Like I said, we have access to we have the data. We just now have better access to it, right?
For someone whose only awareness of this is like ChatGPT or Claude, these enterprise solutions, in the stretch of time from last year's image to this year's image, ChatGPT and how I've seen it and how I've used it has changed dramatically. Like it's improved dramatically. Are these enterprise solutions like changing that fast, or are they really dependent on what is getting put into them? Like are those things improving at like a similar scale, or is because how information gets added to that so different, it's really not, it's a little apples to oranges?
I think it's changing with the tool, like what you're mentioning, right? Like I think, a lot of, like for example, like we have a lot of the same models that you guys have access to. It's just the context, the energy context that we put on top of it, for example. So we are moving with the times. Like as soon as new models come out, we're definitely integrating those in. We're testing them. We're making sure that they're giving good responses. And then we're adding things on top of those that then benefit the enterprise solutions, right? So I think we all are moving with the times, if you will, right? We are migrating and being able to use the technology as quick as possible. I think the oil industry many moons ago, everyone always says like they move slow, right? So I think
the slowest from a data perspective.
But I think there is this understanding, like, as we're getting introduced to these things, I think people are willing to try. I think people are seeing the possibilities, and everyone is moving.
And I think
in that
every
direction.
model is good at its own thing. There's not a single model that can do it all. I think there are some that are moving faster, especially for energy, than others. And I think you're seeing some free versions or enterprise versions that are getting embedded into enterprise-wide at companies to get them to utilize that particular type of agent because it can do document management better, or it can search the internet better, or what have you. But I think as far as an overall technology perspective, I think that it's moving in a good direction. And I think there's a lot of people creating their own agents and creating their own workflows utilizing agents, and which is, I think it's great. I think the one caveat that everyone needs to remember is utilize your workflows that's specific for you and not try to embed that one particular type of agent for everything. And just to be, mindful of that.
Amii, you had a funny expression on your face when she was mentioning data and how slow oil and gas moves. Is there something that this industry could do around data that you think would just unlock?
How long do you have? I think this is my passion and my background. I've been on the board of PPDM for a while and involved in PPDM and for a couple of almost 2 decades now. And data management is my true passion for anything I do, I guess. But I think just better data quality. Just before you do anything with technology at all, just understand that your decisions are only as good as your data. And you have to have that data foundation in order to have the technology work with you and work for you and give you the ability to make those better operational decisions. And use technology like a SynMax or anyone that to be able to have that capability to give you those insights. I think that's the biggest thing, is having that data foundation, because otherwise it's that age-old saying, garbage in, garbage out, right? So, yeah.
It seems surprising to me that that would be a major issue, like the data quality. What is it? Is it just a wide spectrum of why the data quality is poor?
I think it's I don't know if it's not paying attention. I don't know if it's you're used to what you're doing all the time, and you're used to your own workflows and the way of you working, and
so there's not a lot of standardization really of how it's done.
And I think things are getting better. I think things are getting a lot better. I think things are getting more conscious now with AI and being able to see visibly how your quality data is, or the lack thereof. And so that accessibility and that visibility there is probably bringing everything to the forefront of you recognizing, of putting more standards and governance in place for your data so that you can make those better decisions.
Yeah, and I think just inherently from the history in the industry, right, like data was messy and sometimes on purpose, right? So all of your public data that or from leases that you don't necessarily own, when they are forced to be put into government sites, right? And now they're public data, people would be a little loose on where they were targeting, which formations they were looking at. Yeah. And so
that proprietary information, right?
And so
I'm not going to tell you how good I drilled this well.
Right.
But I did really good.
Yeah. So I think there's also that, is that you just inherently had very messy data coming into your systems for so long, and the effort that it takes to clean that up is definitely painful.
Yeah.
I know as a geologist, I saw a statistic out there and I definitely felt it. It's like you spend 75% of your time literally just looking for the data that you need, making sure that it's the right data that you need, so that you're not comparing apples to oranges, especially with production and things like that, where, little tiny details in lithology or
matter
where you're,
Yeah.
exactly.
Mm-hmm.
I would imagine, this will be the final question, I would imagine as image is going to go along, we're going to see more AI, we're going to see more happening in the digital pavilion. We're seeing a lot this year. Do you have any words of wisdom, being in the trenches, of how can someone understand when someone might be having a little BS of what they're sharing. Like, how can you kind of, I think more and more people as they enter the space, there are going to be people over-promising. How do you kind of understand when someone, because it also is amazing. Like everyone has had an experience with it where you're like, wow, so how do you kind of sift through the big promises and understand when maybe a really big breakthrough has actually happened?
I think the big promises, at least now, right, is, this whole AI is going to take our jobs, right? Like if they're saying straight up, we can do all of your interpretation for you, don't even worry about it, just push it all the way through. Those types of things can be big claims. I'm not saying it's impossible forever, right? But I definitely think what people need to realize is it's here to assist you, and it's still in the end something that you need to make your decision from your experience, from your education. Make sure that you're utilizing the tool to help you, not to replace you.
Yeah.
Right.
And I would add to that. I completely agree that I've always said that AI is an accelerator. It is your assistant. It is your accelerator. It's not your decision maker. It's do your own research, right? Make sure that you can back the claims that it's giving you before you do a presentation and present it to an audience of any size, or even when you put a paper out. Like, make sure that you do secondary research on it, and don't just let AI write a paper for you. Don't let AI put a presentation together for you. Let's make sure we use our brains still and make those decisions before we put it out there to the world.
Is there any question I should have asked that I did not?
Where do we see AI going next? Maybe
taking our jobs. No.
That would be funny.
Just said no.
Full circle.
Yeah.
I mean, what you said is tricky in that the sense it's one way right now, but in 3 months, 6 months, it could be different. So it is very dynamic in what is bold claims and what might be
we've seen a lot of acquisitions and divestitures and mergers and things, not only in oil and gas companies, but in software companies, right? And we've seen a lot of new, smaller apps popping up because people are vibe coding now, and people are coming up with their own apps and their own workflows, kind of sort of what I mentioned. If you're creating your own agent and you're creating your own workflow to make sure that it's, fully capable all the way through for your specific workflow. Don't try to make it for everything. So where do I see? I see a lot of these smaller companies popping up that can do little one-offs, and instead of maybe some larger companies that try to do it all. And it get very expensive because a lot of people are cost conscious these days, or a lot more cost conscious these days. And so I see maybe that's where we're going next.
Keep coming to Image, and you'll keep seeing different things in this exhibition floor. Enjoy walking around today.
Always enjoyed the exhibition floor, honestly, just to see what people are doing, and it's always,
And the technology with the booths have gotten crazy.
Even just walking into the exhibit hall with the light show you have going in
it's
above
very
you.
cool. We both said that a minute ago. That's pretty fancy.
It leaves a mark. Yes, for sure. Well, thank you both for taking
Andrew.
time out, and enjoy the rest of your afternoon walking the floor.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining me here on Inside Image. The conversations you've heard today capture the energy, ambition, and collaborative spirit that make Image such a vital gathering for our community. Be sure to catch our highlight episodes, social media clips, and post-event recap, extending the best moments far beyond this week. I'm Andrew Gary. Thanks for listening, and here's to the innovations ahead.